The modern era of ufology began in the late 40s and early 50s. Since then, people have come forward with inside information, allegedly from the government, on the UFO Enigma. Some have been civilians, government employees, retired military, and active military. In the UFO community, these brave souls, willing to risk it all to tell the public what is really going on, have been called whistleblowers. Whistleblowing is when a person, often an employee, reveals information about activity within a private government or public organization that is deemed illegal, immoral, illicit, unsafe, or fraudulent. Whistleblowers can use a variety of internal or external channels to communicate information or allegations. In the case of ufology, it is often inside secret information about government dealings with the subject that the whistleblower deems important for the public to know. This can include leaking information, coming forward with direct or indirect knowledge, or speaking up after retirement. For example, in 1947, something crashed near Roswell, New Mexico. At the time, it was considered top secret. In the early 1980s, Jesse Marcel, a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force retired, came forward with information about what had crashed. This led to an investigation by UFO researchers. The late Stanton Friedman, a nuclear scientist, headed the investigation, along with Don Smith, Kevin Randall, and others. They pieced together the events of that fateful day, and now we have the full story of Roswell, including new information that continues to be revealed as more eyewitnesses come forward or give deathbed confessions.
I've yet to find a debunker who has done his homework. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to defend his position because there's plenty of data showing him he's full of baloney. So I take joy in that. I was the initial civilian investigator of the Roswell incident. It was totally by surprise. I mean, unexpected, so to speak. And I certainly didn't know when I had my first conversation with Jesse Marcel that 30 years later, I'd still be working on that case, or that Roswell would have a festival every year and so forth. I've enjoyed coming here. I enjoy the opportunity to answer people's questions.
Had it not been for Jesse Marcel blowing the whistle on Roswell, we may never have heard of this UFO crash in the desert. Today, most researchers agree an alien spacecraft did indeed crash. Bodies were recovered, and this material is being kept somewhere within the government infrastructure. People who come forward may not always be referred to as whistleblowers, especially if they are not currently employed by the government and can give first-hand information. Often information is leaked or is given well after the fact when the whistleblower is retired or feels it may be safe to discuss an event from years, even decades before. In some cases, when a whistleblower is absolutely convinced of UFO information they have knowledge of, they too may join the ranks of UFO researchers and begin trying to find new information or tell of their own experiences. Some write books, papers, or do interviews, are featured speakers at UFO events, or create organizations to further explore the issue, all in an attempt to educate the public and disseminate the truth to whoever will listen. Lieutenant Colonel Wendell C. Stevens was a veteran UFO researcher specializing in contactee research. However, he had also been in the military, where he was exposed to actual UFO information. He was born in 1923 and enlisted in the U.S. military service at an early age. He alternated his career between pilot and air technical service assignments with the Air Technical Intelligence Center, ATIC, at Wright Field. In 1947, Stevens was assigned from ATIC to Alaska, where he first encountered military personnel who had seen UFOs and became interested in the subject. After retirement, he began to tell of what he had heard from military personnel in Alaska.
And one of the cases, for instance, involved a 200-foot diameter disc, estimated, sitting on the ice pack ahead of an approaching B-29, and as the B-29 got close enough to get a pretty good look at it, it jumped into the air and flew away. Now this 200-foot diameter ship left the ground, leaving nothing behind, no ground equipment, not even an oil slick on the ground. When we'd launch a B-29 for those missions, we had a sea of equipment around the B-29, bigger than the B-29 ever was, left behind when it took off. And so this was a unique. There's no way we could launch anything up there that way, and somebody else is doing it all the time, apparently.
In 1988, two FBI offices received similar versions of a memo titled Operation Majestic 12, claiming to be highly classified government documents. The memo appeared to be a briefing for newly elected President Eisenhower on a secret committee created to exploit a recovery of an extraterrestrial aircraft and cover up this work from public examination. These documents were leaked to UFO researchers, and the late Stanton Friedman began an investigation on the truth and veracity of the documents. He did exhaustive investigations and found much of the information to be plausible.
The saucers are real, they're classified higher than the H-bomb, and this secret committee, headed by Dr. Vannevar Bush within the Research and Development Board, is looking into the modus operandi, how the saucers work, basically. And then it says, and they're also talking about mental aspects of the whole phenomenon, which is interesting.
No one knows who leaked the documents or if they actually are real. The government denies they are authentic, and many researchers today have dismissed them as bogus. However, Stanton believed they could be actual government documents and presented real information, or they could be part of some disinformation campaign. In any case, the controversial documents have been thoroughly investigated, and some believe an anonymous whistleblower was trying to get authentic information out about this group or a similar group that actually did exist and may still exist today. Governments keep secrets, sometimes for decades. It's important they not allow enemy governments to know what they have and how they plan to use it. Since World War II, many secrets have been kept about advanced jets, spy planes, and other military equipment the United States developed. The U-2 spy plane was a secret until one was shot down by the Russians. The stealth bombers were top secret until they were used in Iraq. Even sophisticated software and spyware is often kept secret because they're used to thwart off cyber attacks. Some facilities are kept secret for decades, even though they exist in plain sight. Area 51 in Nevada is one such secret base. We keep secrets. The British keeps secrets. The Russians keep secrets, as well as all nations.
Governments can and do keep secrets, so it is quite possible for a UFO cover-up to be instigated and maintained if that's what the powers that be wanted to do. Let me give two historical examples. The first is the Manhattan Project, where thousands of people were engaged on a highly classified project, which of course was not disclosed until the bomb was actually dropped. Another example, perhaps in a sense an almost better example because of the time that this secret was kept, is the breaking of the German codes during the Second World War, and particularly the Enigma machines and the work done from places like Bletchley Park in the UK. And even after the war was over, this secret was kept for decades, and I think it was only towards the end of the 1960s that actually it was revealed in a book, I think, that yes, actually we'd broken the German codes.
A growing number of mostly retired, some active, military and civilian agency, government agency people, less constrained because of their position and the fact that this is the 21st century, it's not 1950 anymore, are starting to talk. They're starting to write books, they're starting to come public and talk, they're starting to talk to researchers in private, they're going in front of cameras, they're holding news conferences, and they're basically talking about what they saw, what they did, what they heard. And of course, and all of what they saw, did, and heard is supporting what the researchers had pretty much established as an extraterrestrial presence. The government knows about it, the government has embargoed it.
Rumors have existed for decades about secret government and military programs whose task is to retrieve crashed vehicles or those which have been shot down intentionally. These UAPs are said to be kept secret at Wright-Patterson, Area 51, and other bases and facilities around the country, as well as worldwide. Whistleblowers are the primary source of information about these programs. Data concerning them have in times past been given to UFO researchers, usually off the record, and the whistleblower never comes forward. Little by little, a trickle of information is spoon-fed to investigators who cannot access these bases, and therefore they cannot prove the claims. They can only report what they were told. From what researchers have been able to gather, there appears to be a top-secret crash retrieval program currently active in America and abroad to recover UAPs and UFOs whenever possible. There is even a military squad or team that is trained in such retrievals.
Projects that involve the retrieval of crashed discs. So what his job was to go out with a number of other people who were recruited from various military services, that they would come together, they would then be told to go to a particular location, and they would then have the responsibility of sanitizing and retrieving whatever information and whatever physical evidence there is about a crashed extraterrestrial vehicle in different locations in the United States or elsewhere.
There are three methods by which a whistleblower can come forward with information or data about a government project or program they believe strongly that the public or Congress needs to know. One is they can follow proper channels within the government to be granted permission to disclose what they know and how much of what they know can be talked about. This method requires approval for them to blow the whistle on other employees and their secret programs. This is the release of information in a controlled manner. The second method is when a whistleblower confides in a reporter or investigator information that is damning or secret, and the reporter will then disclose the information from a tip, an anonymous source, or an unnamed whistleblower. It is up to the reporter to determine if the information is accurate and keep their source secret and protected. In this case, it is up to the journalist to determine what information should be allowed to be printed, and the journalist takes responsibility for the dissemination of the claims. Reporters have protections when dealing with tips, sources, and whistleblowers. The third is to leak information out in such a way they remain completely anonymous, such as when the MJ-12 documents were disclosed. In this case, the whistleblower may mail or send secret information or documents anonymously to an investigator or reporter. In this case, the information may be in question because there's no way to verify it or the credibility of the whistleblower. Depending on how secret the information is, the source could be arrested if discovered. Often retired military personnel will talk about things they witnessed or were a party to when they were in active service. These stories abound among UFO researchers, and in many cases, the individual may write books on their involvement in secret programs. The government will usually dismiss these claims and deny them. To fine, arrest, or jail the person talking about such information would be admitting it is true and worth criminal prosecution.
A compelling case where a UFO was seen over at least 2, maybe 3 different nights. Witnesses were United States Air Force personnel based in the UK at the twin bases of Bentwaters and Woodbridge. Those witnesses included Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, the deputy base commander. There was physical trace evidence in terms of an assessment of radiation levels taken at the landing site. I mean, this wasn't lights in the sky. This was a metallic craft that actually was seen to land in a clearing in the forest. The MOD's defense intelligence staff assessed those radiation levels as being, and this is a direct quote from an MOD document, which is up on their own website, significantly higher than background. Now, these radiation levels were about 8 times the normal background levels that you would expect for that particular area. There's a radar operator who says that at the time of the incident he took a call from the control tower saying we have something unknown over the base. He testifies that there was an uncorrelated target on the radar screen for a couple of sweeps. Colonel Holt talks about light beams being fired down from the UFO at him and his men, and how later on in the night the UFO was firing light beams down at the weapons storage area on the military base. So in terms of hard evidence from credible eyewitnesses and the physical evidence in terms of things like radar and radiation levels, this case is about as good as it gets.
Philip J. Corso served in the United States Army from February 1942 to March of 1963 and earned the rank of lieutenant colonel. He headed up the Foreign Technology Division within the Army. Corso published The Day After Roswell in 1997 about his alleged involvement in the research of extraterrestrial technology recovered from the 1947 Roswell incident. On July 23, 1997, he was a guest on the popular late-night radio show Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell, where he spoke live about his Roswell story. Corso died of a heart attack less than a year later. He claimed the government was in possession of advanced extraterrestrial craft and technology that over time was disseminated to companies to develop into usable technology or inventions. He also claimed the bodies of alien beings were recovered and that he saw one. The government denied his claims, but took no action against him, even though he was a decorated officer with impeccable credentials. Another case of possible leaked information from a whistleblower is the story by Bob Lazar. Lazar is an American businessman who claimed he was hired in the late 1980s to reverse engineer extraterrestrial technology. This work supposedly occurred at a secret site called S4, a subsidiary installation allegedly located several miles south of the United States Air Force facility, popularly known as Area 51. Lazar purports to have examined an alien craft and read U.S. government briefing documents that described alien involvement in human affairs over the past 10,000 years. His claims brought additional public attention to Area 51 and fueled conspiracy theories surrounding its classified activities. His assertions have been analyzed and rejected by skeptics and some ufologists, although he retains a following of supporters. Lazar has no evidence of alien life or technology, and elements of his claimed education and employment history have been exaggerated or fabricated. Perceptions of Lazar have also been affected by criminal activity. He was convicted in 1990 for his involvement in a prostitution ring, and again in 2006 for selling illegal chemicals. Journalist Ken Lane states, "A lot of credible people have looked at Lazar's story and rationally concluded he made it up. However, some of his detailed information about S4, the fact it does exist, and the saucer's flight capabilities is consistent with other claims. We simply do not know if Lazar is an actual whistleblower or just a good storyteller." In fact, almost all claims of extraterrestrial beings or craft, crashed or not, have been denied by the government. When the Roswell story broke, the government came out twice to deny the event, with their own claims it was a radar target balloon and crash dummies dropped from airplanes. The Mogul Balloon Project did exist in 1947, but the crashed dummies were not used in tests until the 1950s. Few believed the government's denials after that. To date, the government and military maintain their version of the story is the truth, even though investigators have clearly shown many problems with it.
Half of the American people clearly state in poll after poll that UFOs are behind ETs are behind the UFO that they're being seen in the sky. Some of them, meaning there's an ET presence. Half, 80 to 90% are consistently saying the government's lying about this. The government's position is still there's nothing to it. There's nothing at all. All right. So you have this huge disparity, right, between the citizens' view and the government's position.
Sergeant Clifford Stone, retired, came forward about his own involvement in UFO crash retrieval teams during his 22-year military service from 1968 to 1990. Sergeant Stone served in the U.S. Army and claims he was covertly recruited into an elite UFO retrieval team due to his natural ability to interface with extraterrestrial biological entities. The strongest objective support for his claims of having worked in covert UFO retrieval projects is the extensive documentation he has provided to support the existence of covert UFO crash retrieval teams. He was able to use very specific Freedom of Information Act's request to uncover information disclosing the existence of classified projects such as moon dust and blue fly that were created to recover debris of UFOs. Even strong critics, such as Major Kevin Randall, U.S. Air Force retired, acknowledge Stone's pioneering research in bringing to the public information concerning UFO crash retrieval teams. In the preface to Stone's book, UFOs Are Real, another critic, Stanton Friedman, acknowledges Stone's efforts in bringing into the public arena many documents never before published. The fact that Stone was able to ferret out the existence of such classified projects despite previous denial of their existence by various military and government authorities supports his testimony that he had first-hand knowledge of these classified projects. It is dangerous to disclose secret documents. The disclosure of classified information involves severe penalties, especially for whistleblowers for the UFO phenomenon that appear to run the most risk of adverse penalties in disclosing such information. Stone cataloged in his book, UFOs Are Real, numerous documents he had been able to retrieve by the Freedom of Information Act, even during his years of military service. Subsequently, Stone's pioneering documentary research into UFO crash retrievals is strong support for his testimony of actually having served on such teams during his military service. Stone claimed in an interview that during his military service he was monitored by an individual whose rank was never told, but whom he called Colonel. The Colonel was present at UFO crash retrieval locations and led the debriefing session of Stone. He claims that the Colonel allowed him to read a 3-inch thick notebook manual that contained information on 57 types of extraterrestrial biological entities known to the military. As a whistleblower, there continues to be intense debate over Stone's testimony and the veracity of his claims. If true, then the existence of several alien species interacting with Earth is astonishing.
The question of how many races are visiting us is a really fascinating question. I mean, how can we know for sure exactly how many extraterrestrial races are visiting us or interacting with humanity? I mean, there are different sources disclosing some of that information. I found the most credible to be whistleblowers, people who have worked in these various secret projects, who in some way have kind of been given information that gives them an idea of exactly how many races are here.
In the black ops dark world that is the basement of what I call the secret empire, which is the intelligence wing of the military-industrial complex, meaning the totality of all of the classified programs, people, and documents, all of the agencies, intelligence agencies, and all of the classified segments of the major government contractors, which are vast. That's the secret empire. It's vast. It's bigger than the Roman Empire. And in its basement, there are things going on which we cannot even fathom. All we get are little hints on occasion, right? A vast underground world, literally underground world, in which programs, experimentation, and even policies are being conducted.
Luis Elizondo is a former U.S. Army counterintelligence special agent and former employee of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. From 2008 until his resignation in 2017, Elizondo worked with the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence in the Pentagon. Elizondo claims that ending in 2012, he was the director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, a special access program funded at the initiative of then-Senator Majority Leader Harry Reid to investigate aerial threats, including unidentified aerial phenomena. Elizondo told a reporter he thought that he might have been selected for ATIP because of his scientific background, work as a counterintelligence agent protecting American aerospace technology, and the lack of interest in science fiction. According to the Department of Defense, the ATIP program ended in 2012 after 5 years. Elizondo claims he worked with officials from the U.S. Navy and the CIA out of his Pentagon office for this program until October 2017, when he resigned to protest what he characterized as excessive secrecy and internal opposition. Elizondo asserts that underestimating or ignoring these potential threats is not in the best interest of the department, no matter the level of political contention. The New Yorker reports that Elizondo was hired to take over the program, which was an outgrowth of a government project awarded to businessman and paranormal enthusiast Robert Bigelow, ostensibly to examine the future of warfare, but reporting almost exclusively about UFOs, including a photo of a supposed tracking device that aliens had supposedly implanted in an abductee. His position in the ATIP program was questioned by The Intercept and challenged by Pentagon officials, with spokesperson Christopher Sherwood saying Mr. Elizondo had no responsibilities with regard to the ATIP program while he worked in OUSDI, the Office of Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, up until the time he resigned, effective October of 2017. In response, Elizondo filed a complaint with the agency's Inspector General, claiming a coordinated campaign to discredit him for speaking out, including Pentagon press statements asserting he had no official role in UFO research even after his role was officially confirmed. In the Inspector General's complaint, Elizondo also stated that he was the target of a personal vendetta from a political rival. Senator Harry Reid sent a letter to NBC News stating, "I can state as a matter of record Lou Elizondo's involvement and leadership role in this program." Elizondo believes UAPs might be from another dimension. They might use hydrogen found in water to warp space-time, and the U.S. government may be in possession of exotic material associated with UAPs. Whether Elizondo is a legitimate whistleblower with highly secret information is continuing to be argued. In any case, he is responsible for the current disclosure of UAP videos, radar data, and incidents being released recently, and the current congressional interest in the UAP phenomenon. It was his disclosure of ATIP and the new task force by the government that kick-started much of the new data and confirmations we have to date.
Whether governments have done this willingly or whether in some cases they've been dragged kicking and screaming into that decision by a combination of the UFO community and the media and people making pretty smart, targeted FOI requests, I don't know. But we are where we are, and it's an interesting situation. We know an awful lot more now about Air Force and government involvement with this subject and some of the cases they've investigated than we knew 2 or 3 years ago, and that's a great thing.
David Charles Grush is a decorated Afghanistan combat veteran and former Air Force intelligence officer who worked in the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the NGA, and the National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO. From 2019 to 2021, he was the representative of the NRO to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force. From late 2021 to July 2022, he was the co-lead for UAP analysis at the NGA and its representative to the task force. He assisted in drafting the National Defense Authorization Act of 2023, which includes provisions for reporting of UFOs, including whistleblower protections and exemptions to non-disclosure orders and agreements. Congressional interest in UFO sightings immediately prior to Grush's public claims surrounded questions about the 4 objects that the Air Force shot down in February of 2023. One was a Chinese spy balloon, while the other's identity was never disclosed. In 2023, United States Air Force officer and former intelligence official David Grush was interviewed by various media outlets and testified in a U.S. House of Representatives congressional hearing. Grush claimed that he had conversations with unnamed officials that led him to believe that the U.S. federal government maintains a secretive UFO or UAP recovery program and is in possession of non-human spacecraft along with their dead pilots, which he referred to as non-human biologics.
You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Who in the government, either what agency, sub-agency, what contractors, who should be called into the next hearing about UAPs, either in a public setting or even in a private setting? And you probably can't name names, but what agencies or organizations, contractors, et cetera, do we need to call in to get these questions answered, whether it's about funding, what programs are happening, and what's out there?
I can give you a specific cooperative and hostile witness list of specific individuals that were in those.
And how soon can we get that list?
I'm happy to provide that to you after the hearing.
Super, thank you.
In 2022, Grush filed a whistleblower complaint with the U.S. Office of the Intelligence Community Inspector General to support his plan to share classified information with the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. He also filed a complaint alleging retaliation by his superiors over a similar complaint he made in 2021.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it. I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower. As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of increased transparency.
He claims to have viewed documents reporting that Mussolini's government recovered a non-human spacecraft in 1933, which the Vatican and the Five Eyes assisted the U.S. in procuring in 1944 or 1945. Grush claims secondhand knowledge that American citizens have been harmed and killed as part of the government's efforts to cover up the information. In response to his June 2023 claims, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and the U.S. Department of Defense issued statements reaffirming that no evidence of extraterrestrial life has been discovered and that there is no verifiable information about anyone possessing and reverse engineering any extraterrestrial materials. In July 2023, testimony given to the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, Grush repeated some of his claims under oath, alongside testimony from retired U.S. fighter pilot Ryan Graves and retired U.S. Navy Commander David Fravor on their personal experiences related to UFOs.
A few questions for Mr. Favor. As an expert naval aviator, have you ever seen an object that looked and moved like the Tic Tac UAP?
No.
Did the Tic Tac UAP move in such a way that defied the laws of physics?
The way we understand them, yes.
Many dismiss UAP reports as classified weapons testing by our own government, but in your experience as a pilot, does our government typically test advanced weapon systems right next to multi-million-dollar jets without informing our pilots?
No, we have test ranges for that.
Again, I'd like to know, how do you know that these were not our aircraft?
Some of the behaviors that we saw in a working area, we would see these objects being at 0.0 Mach, that's 0 airspeed, over certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1, 1.2 Mach, and they would do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
Grush testified that he could not elaborate publicly on some aspects of his claims, but offered to provide further details to representatives in a sensitive, compartmentalized information facility, or a SCIF. Grush claims that the U.S. federal government maintains a highly secretive UFO retrieval program and possesses multiple spacecraft of non-human origin, as well as corpses of deceased pilots. Grush also claims there is substantive evidence that white-collar crime took place to conceal UFO programs, and that he had interviewed officials who said that people had been killed to conceal the programs.
Have you faced any retaliation or reprisals for any of your testimony or anything on these lines?
Yeah, I have to be careful what I say in detail because there is an open whistleblower reprisal investigation on my behalf, and I don't want to compromise that investigation by providing anything that may help provide somebody information. But it was very brutal and very unfortunate, some of the tactics they used to hurt me both professionally and personally, to be quite frank. Yeah.
It's very unfortunate. As they say, when you're over the target, that's when they do the most firing at you. Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Grush stated he tried to get the director of AARO to help him share his claims with Congress. I expressed some concerns to Dr. Kirkpatrick about a year ago and told him what I was starting to uncover, and he didn't follow up with me. He said that UFOs could be coming from extra dimensions, that he had spoken with intelligence officials whom the U.S. military had briefed on football field-sized craft, that the U.S. government transferred some crashed UFOs to a defense contractor, and that there was malevolent activity by UFOs. During a July 26, 2023 congressional hearing, Grush said that he was informed in the course of his official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program to which he was denied access, and that he believes that the U.S. government is in possession of UAPs based on his interviews with 40 witnesses over 4 years. Grush claimed in response to congressional questions that the U.S. has retrieved non-human biological matter from the pilots of the craft, and that this was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the UAP program he talked to that are currently still on the program. When asked by U.S. Representative Tim Burchett during the July 26 hearing if Grush had personal knowledge of people who've been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal the government's possession of extraterrestrial technology, Grush said yes, but that he was not able to provide details except within a skiff. Many critics of his claims have pointed out that they are just hearsay, where a guy says he knows a guy who knows another guy who heard from a guy that the government has alien spaceships. Critics also said of Grush's account that it's an extraordinary claim and it requires extraordinary evidence, none of which we're getting, adding, "Show me the spaceship." Often, when whistleblowers do come forward, they do not have any evidence because the government is not about to provide any. This makes claims easily dismissed. However, when claims are this detailed and are supported by others in government departments, it makes it more plausible. According to Leslie Keene, the reporter that broke the story, she vetted Grush by interviewing Carl Neal, a retired Army colonel who was also on the UFO task force, and a Jonathan Gray, which is a synonym, who Keene described as a current U.S. intelligence official at the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. Keene wrote that Neal called Grush beyond reproach, and that both Neal and Gray supported Grush's claims about a secret UFO retrieval and reverse engineering program does exist. Sean M. Kirkpatrick is an American laser and materials physicist and currently director of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office at the United States Department of Defense. Kirkpatrick is also an adjunct assistant professor of physics at the University of Georgia. Kirkpatrick appears to be angry that the information provided by Grush had not been disclosed to his department. Following the July 26, 2023 congressional UAP hearings that included testimony from David Grush, Kirkpatrick wrote that, contrary to assertions made in the hearings, Grush has refused to speak with AARO, so that some details said to have been given to Congress had not been provided to his office, and also that the hearing was insulting to the officers of the Department of Defense and intelligence community who chose to join AARO, many with not unreasonable anxieties about the career risks that this would entail. This suggests that not all compartmented information within the government regarding UAPs is shared with AARO, and this secret is still being kept hidden within specialized departments within the government. Kirkpatrick has noted that U.S. military personnel are observing metallic orbs in many locations all over the world, that spherical objects account for the largest proportion, nearly half, of all UAP reports received by his office, and that some of these objects are capable of very interesting apparent maneuvers.
You'll see it come through the top of the screen. There it goes, and then the camera will slew to follow it. You'll see it pop in and out of the field of view there. This is essentially all of the data we have associated with this event from some years ago. It is going to be virtually impossible to fully identify that just based off of that video. Now, what we can do and what we are doing is keeping that as part of that group of 52% to see what are the similarities, what are the trends across all of these, do we see these in a particular distribution, do they all behave the same or not. As we get more data, we will be able to go back and look at these in a fuller context.
Whistleblowing is nothing new. As early as the late 1940s and 1950s, there's been speculation the Air Force has been holding back on the truth of the UFO Enigma. One of the first to bring this to the public's attention was Donald Edward Kehoe. He was an American Marine Corps naval aviator, writer of aviation articles and stories in a variety of publications, and tour manager of aviation pioneer Charles Lindbergh. In the 1950s, Kehoe became a UFO researcher and writer, arguing that the U.S. government should conduct research into UFO matters and should publicly release all of its UFO files. Kehoe had access to naval, marine, and other pilots and their stories.
In 1947, the Air Technical Intelligence Center at Dayton, the top Air Force intelligence men and scientists under contract, sent a secret document to the Commanding General of the Air Force saying that whatever these things were, they were real. In 1948, ATIC, the same group, sent a top secret estimate to the Commanding General, Hoyt Vandenberg, said these were interplanetary spaceships. In 1952, there was an intelligence analysis of the maneuvers of these things, as seen by radar, triangulation, radar photographs, and in 1953, the Central Intelligence Agency and the Air Force had a special panel of scientists meet at the Pentagon to tell him what to do. And after they got through, this group said, "You don't have proof that these things exist, not scientific proof, but you have a very strong circumstantial case. We suggest you quadruple the investigation, set up special observation posts, and in the meantime, release everything you've got to the American people." Now, you've got 4 documents there that they've been sitting on all this time. Now and they have been spending a lot of money investigating flying saucers. If they don't exist, why the money? Why did the intelligence teams rush out every time there's a sighting?
Interest in UFOs broke out across the United States following pilot Kenneth Arnold's report of odd, fast-moving aerial objects in Washington state during the summer of 1947. Kehoe began to follow this subject with some interest, though he was initially skeptical of any extraordinary answer to the UFO question. As their forms, flight maneuvers, speeds, and light technology was apparently far ahead of any nation's developments, Kehoe became convinced that they must be the products of unearthly intelligences, and that the U.S. government was trying to suppress the whole truth about the subject. This conclusion was based especially on the response Kehoe found when he quizzed various officials about flying saucers. He was told there was nothing to the subject, yet was simultaneously denied access to saucer-related documents. Off the record, pilots and government officials spoke of the reality of the UFO issue. In Kehoe's view, the aliens, wherever their origins or intentions, did not seem hostile and had likely been observing the Earth for 200 years or more, though Kehoe wrote that their observation suddenly increased in 1947. In 1955, Kehoe authored The Flying Saucer Conspiracy, which pointedly accused elements of the United States government of engaging in a conspiracy to cover up knowledge of flying saucers, the term used at that time. Kehoe claims the existence of a silence group of orchestrating this conspiracy. Historian of folklore Curtis Peebles argues the flying saucer conspiracy marked a shift in Kehoe's belief system. No longer were flying saucers the central theme that now belonged to this silence group and its cover-up. For the next 2 decades, Kehoe's belief about this would dominate the flying saucer issue. It's very possible Kehoe had some inside information and was trying to blow the whistle on the UFO subject, yet also keep informants secret for their own safety. On January 22, 1958, Kehoe appeared on a CBS live television show, The Armstrong Circle Theater, to speak on the topic of UFOs. Kehoe charged that a U.S. congressional committee was evaluating evidence that will absolutely prove that the UFOs are machines under intelligent control. However, CBS stopped the audio portion of the live broadcast. Herbert A. Carlberg, CBS Director of Editing, stated this program had been carefully cleared for security reasons. Was Kehoe being silenced by the Air Force or a worried network? Kehoe died in 1988, fully believing there were documents and government officials that were suppressing information about the UFO-UAP mystery. It was widely held that Kehoe had some inside information on the subject, especially in the early 50s when the Air Force was working with him. Later, when he began to figure out the reality of the UFO issue, they cut ties with him and began denying any information or documents existed. We now know that was not true. The Air Force and other military agencies had and continues to have extensive documents on UFOs. In retrospect, Major Donald Kehoe would have been the first whistleblower to present evidence that the government and military knew much more about this issue than they were willing to disclose. The government often relies on whistleblowers to bring forth issues such as misappropriation of funds, government workplace abuses, line item financial problems within an agency, and dealings with other countries. In fact, many of the major issues over the past 5 decades that came forth and became major news events started with a whistleblower. There are channels for such disclosure, and Congress seeks out these individuals so investigations can ensue. When a whistleblower does come forward, their testimony is taken very seriously. Investigations are initiated, and in time, usually, the issue is resolved. In some cases, it leads to criminal and civil lawsuits. Whistleblowers are a necessary and important component of a democracy. Problems cannot be fixed if you don't know they are happening, so whistleblowers are often the beginning of disclosure of an issue. The UFO-UAP phenomenon is no different. And throughout the history of the United States, we often rely on whistleblowers to bring out stories so they can be investigated. These stories may initially be denied, but with further investigation, often they lead to critical information once held secret from the public. Whistleblowers are often held as heroes who are working towards transparency. With the UFO-UAP issue, there is a fine line a whistleblower may not be able to cross. Their duty to oaths and the preservation of top-secret material that may be in the best interest of the country is considered. National security is a major issue that has to be considered. The revelation of one type of information may also include something that cannot be released. A whistleblower's own personal integrity will be scrutinized as well. Their rank and character is important to the investigation, and even mental health issues may come into play. Is the whistleblower a prankster, jokester, or mentally unstable? These character attributes may affect whether the individual is to be believed and can affect their testimony even if they are truthful. Many whistleblowers have had their own reputations destroyed by coming forward and faced reprisals from colleagues for speaking out. The decision by any individual to come forward and become a whistleblower is something that has to be taken seriously. There must be strong evidence that backs up their claims and a trail to follow to get to the truth. Whistleblowers have to disclose their information under oath, and penalties may ensue if it is found they are lying or exaggerating their testimony. Once a whistleblower does come forward, he or she not only puts themselves in danger, but co-workers and the agency they are reporting itself. Some whistleblowers have gone on to write books and do interviews, walking a fine line between what they can say and what they cannot reveal. They could even face charges of treason if they reveal any material related to national security. Speculative information may easily be denied, and the reputation of the whistleblower dismissed or even destroyed in order to keep the truth secret.
Whatever you think the UFO issue represents, whether you believe they're extraterrestrial, whether you believe they're black projects, whether you believe that there are a number of different things going on, it seems to me that there are important defense, national security, and air safety issues involved. And that's another reason why I continue to be involved in this field and to speak very openly about it and to do my best to keep this subject in the public eye, particularly through getting it into the mainstream media.
To date, no whistleblower has presented undeniable proof of the existence of aliens, alien materials, or extraterrestrial visitations to Earth. Claims of such are abundant, but so far, nothing concrete has emerged due to a whistleblower's testimony. This does not mean the whistleblowers throughout the study of UFOs are lying. It simply means there's no physical proof of their claims, and physical proof is what science and skeptics need to lay this issue to rest. It is what the public needs as well, a definitive answer to the question of UFOs and UAPs. The government may change the name of the phenomenon, hide proof, and keep secrets for decades, but eventually the truth always prevails. Someone, somewhere, has access to the accumulated data regarding the UFO issue, and perhaps a new whistleblower in the future will bring forth this data in such a way it cannot be denied.
The disclosure event is this and this only. It is the formal acknowledgement of this extraterrestrial presence by the governments of the world, probably starting with the United States government. That's it. Everything else, who they are, what they are, where they're from, how they got here, what their intentions are, what involvement have we had behind the scenes, what vehicles have crashed, what reverse engineering has been done, what treaties have been signed, and a million other things. All of that is post-disclosure. And that will be an informational battle that'll go on between the citizens' interest and the government's interest. And there will be endless there will be what will seem like indeterminable battles over the truth. But that process will be tripped by the disclosure event.
For decades, we have struggled with this issue, and most people now believe that non-terrestrial beings are and have been observing mankind for centuries. The question of UFOs and extraterrestrials is not a new development. Throughout history, strange and seemingly inexplicable phenomena have occurred and been reported or told as stories. Ancient paintings and even cave art depict the presence of otherworldly beings interacting with mankind. The modern study of UFOs is new, but in that time, with more advanced technology, photography, radar, and other devices, we have accumulated an abundance of evidence, both publicly and secretly. Much of that evidence remains in the hands of a select few in the government because they are the ones with the technology to record such data. In America alone, the skies are recorded each day and night. Radar is always working, and space satellites are always watching. We watch our own skies and the maneuvers of other nations as well. With all of this recorded data, it would be impossible for the governments of the world to miss strange and unexplainable activity in our skies and in the heavens. And we know now, through the efforts of brave whistleblowers, there is apparently volumes of information hidden away in secret files and programs. The question remains, is this information hidden for our own protection or for some other nefarious reason? Secrets remain secrets for usually a very short time. At some point, someone tells the truth, and that which was a secret becomes common knowledge. Perhaps one day in the not-so-distant future, we will learn the truth, the whole truth. Till then, whistleblowers will continue to emerge with pieces of this cosmic puzzle, and it is up to us to assemble this knowledge and build the wondrous future that lies ahead.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5,